This is All India Radio. In the program Money Talk, now we bring you a discussion on government efforts for employment generation, Rozgar Mela and launch of Karmayogi Prarambh module. The participants are Jayant Das, economic analyst, and Arjun J. Chowdhury, AIR correspondent.
We'll try and understand from the expert what the Mela is doing in terms of dispensing employment to the youth and what is the launch of the Karmayogi Prarambh module. So let's begin with the launch of the Karmayogi Prarambh module. Jayanta, tell us what exactly is this module?
Typically, it's a technology platform which would be integrating and disseminating both content, knowledge, how government works, various issues related to the government. So the idea is whoever logs in, and I guess it's focused towards encouraging towards government officers across all levels, right from junior to the most senior. And they'll get access to courses, they'll get access to information on how things work, how governments work, how policies work, how policies are framed. So as of now, on a ballpark figure, we already have 306 courses online. So it's a fantastic start, and if anyone can, glimpse through the website and they can check it out and they can see firsthand themselves how these programs are set up. What I noticed, the good thing about the program is they are not long courses. They are short focus courses running from 2 hours to 5 hours. I guess some of the courses might be a bit more than 5 hours. But it certainly gives you a one-stop access, both to information and the second is to modern online systems of learning. And finally, Arjun, as a nation which is constantly speaking of developing on a fast track and to keep up pace with how the global world is growing, it's high time this sort of a portal had to be there in terms of allowing our existing officers, who are the main wheels of how the government moves, both in the state as well as the central, to integrate and focus on their work structure, their learning structure, as well as the delivery modules. So all these three combined is what I guess this Karmayogi Prarambh platform would be focused on. And of course, as time goes on, I am sure there will be much more content than what it is there right now in terms of development.
So we're talking about the education and training of existing government employees to be more efficient in the administration process itself. Isn't that something that the DOPT was doing, and is that a value addition in terms of what the DOPT is already doing?
At this point of time, what we need to focus is breaking away of silos. What we also have to understand is to make the understanding and learning seamless. What I believe is what this particular platform does is it brings you your learning into your cell phone or into your desktop. Either way, whatever you want to access to the learning process and all. It's a self-paced learning in many of the cases, and you can go through, you can understand, you can flip through. And DOPT and all obviously have a schedule and calendar. So that's obviously a value addition to what this particular portal does. And as I said, in modern day work, where things move very fast, you can't afford to wait for 2 months or 3 months for a scheduled course where you can join as a team and take it up. So I guess it brings you much more closer to the programs, to the content, and absolutely to your learning appetite. So that's also a critical component in the program. So you need not be told by your bosses, or you need not be a compulsion of a department to go through a particular program. This particular process and portal opens up a host of A to Z things, right from science, technology to what is our budget and things like that. I mean, if you make it in a cursory glance, I guess in addition to what the central government or the state government employees would be learning from here, it also opens up a huge repository for people who want to be part of state government and central government processes in the future. So I guess it also opens up a repository for them in terms of learning and understanding.
What about skill development? Do you see that as a value addition to skill of government employees in the performance of their duties?
India as a whole has always been focusing on skill for the last decade and so, and specifically prevalent in the last 7 to 8 years in terms of how India wants to become a skill nation and skill capital of the world. So taking a cue from there, it's also important to understand that our government employees in that sense should also be equally skilled. And skill is just not a single work. It's a work in motion always. So you move from one skill to another, learning one skill to another to keep up with pace with technology, to keep up with pace with how things work. To give you a brief example, a bureaucrat, say, who is working in the agricultural sector, apart from his pesticide, his fertilizers, or his crop and weather learning, he has a new skill set to learn in terms of how drones are now being used to deliver those things, how drones are being used for studies in terms of agriculture now. So those courses are also put in there. And that's where I guess it's a process, it's a work in motion. Skill is just not a one-stop job where you take up a skill and then you forget for the next 3-4 years. There is an unlimited option of acquiring skill. And as in any organization, both in the private sector as well as in the public sector, it's a continuous process where you need to reskill yourself with each and every single responsibility you get. And I think that's what also his Prime Minister's speech has said, and he has focused on where he said the reskilling and upskilling, both are important criteria for efficient government worker.
Tell us about the Rozgar Mela, where the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, has handed over by virtual mode 70,000 appointment letters to inductees into the government service targeting the youth. Tell us about this Mela.
The Honorable Prime Minister has also emphasized that the creation of jobs is a never-ending process, and the faster you create them in terms of need and in terms of synergized need of what the economy demands is a critical step for both the government as well as the private sector. What is important to understand is we have now as a practice calendar of Rozgar Melas happening almost every month in some state or the other, or number of states bunching together to create these Rozgar Melas as a practice. It's just not a one-off show where you create a Rozgar Mela and you demonstrate exchange of interviews between the employer and the employee. It's a continuous process, and I think we get to see more of these things happening as we keep on moving on into the future. The particular event I mentioned today where the Prime Minister handed over 71,000 appointment letters to across beneficiaries and all is a culmination of the requirement and demands for various government departments. And as I said, and even the Prime Minister emphasized, even the private sector, why only the government, even the private sector is joining Rozgar Melas. I mean, as recent as I think a couple of weeks ago, we had a big one happening in Odisha, for example. The central government skill ministry presided over to give jobs to a huge number of people. So this also brings in not only a ground traction in terms of where the possible people who are looking for jobs get to meet their employers firsthand, but it also creates a space whereby this interaction also leads to a lot of learning, both for the employers as well as for the employees. Because previously, the traditional way of walking into an office to pick up a job or putting up an ad and then sitting for an exam, it had an involvement process, but somehow it had a very passive involvement of both knowledge and ideas. And let me tell you, for every single employee, a job seeker, Rozgar Melas also give them an opportunity to see what is there at hand in terms of presently not only just in jobs, but in terms of people who are seeking jobs. If you walk into a Rozgar Mela, if there are 5 to 10,000 more people who are seeking jobs like you, you also get to interact, you also get to know your competition, you got to know your learning skills. And I think that's a huge platform. So this physical space, or even a virtual Rozgar Mela which had been there during the COVID days, this creates that particular traction in the ground. And I think it's a very critical learning example as well. And I personally believe Rozgar Melas are just not limited to giving of appointment letters for jobs. It also creates a hub, first-hand experience that is created in terms of your own learning, trying to gauge it with what your peers are learning, and also for the corporates or the government departments who are there to hire people to have a first-hand knowledge of how a critical mass of the young India is at this point of time.
So we have 24,000 inductees into the paramilitary forces under the recent appointees of 71,000 as you mentioned earlier, 4,000 into the railways, and the other categories of posts which are being filled earlier, which included 75,000 inductees in the month of October. We're talking about teachers, lecturers, nurses, nursing officers, doctors, pharmacists, radiographers and other technical and paramedical posts. So it's quite broad-based. How important is this induction in terms of introducing the model code of conduct?
Well, of course, that's a necessary step, as I said, because if you are joining the government at any level, any department, any stage, the integration of the values, synergies, the code of conducts and things like that play an important determining factor. And in this particular program through the Rozgar Mela, it will be no different. But I guess we should not just limit ourselves to government programs. Rozgar Melas also bring in a lot of private jobs into the economy, and it also brings in an equal synergized platform. And as I said, the Prime Minister has emphasized on both the public and the private sector to create this job momentum to bring in the much desired economic goals which India wishes to achieve.
So this is the employment that is being provided by the central government, and now they're talking about a double engine growth. So they want both the center and the states to be involved equally in providing employment as far as the government sector is concerned. How do you see this slogan agreeing with the public in terms of government service?
Well, typically, I see 3 major advantages out of this particular thing when we speak of a double engine growth or focus or giving jobs a single entity in these job melas. The first huge advantage is clearing up of vacancies. Let's not forget, there has been huge vacancies in various departments of governments, and some of them are critical vacancies, which for some reason or the other, which for, because of the lengthy, recruitment processes had got somehow delayed or challenged. Now, these Rozgar Melas provide you that platform where departments can go in and induct people in terms of providing these direct recruits. That's the first advantage. The second advantage is Finally, is the state government's call to have these Rozgar Melas at their state in a much more, recognized fashion, which will provide ground traction in the states. This also would help, as I said, for someone, say, a village or a district in Guntur region to seek a job in his nearby region only, and not to seek a job in Assam, for example. So these are also a huge benefit when we speak of a double engine growth, where we say both the central government and state government together are coming at your doorstep through a Rozgar Mela to provide you a job that will be much more localized and you need not migrate, for example. So that's the second factor. The third important factor is, once again, where I believe the learnings of the state government, the central government and the private sector together are coming together. I mean, we have been speaking of public and private sector. Public sector, obviously the central and state government joining hands together, bringing in the best of synergies to hire people, and that too at one single sort of a situation. So I think that's our three major advantages that are going to propel the popularity as well as the well-being of what these Rozgar Melas intend to do in the future in terms of harnessing the employable skills of a particular youth for the growth of the nation.
So how does this Mela actually work? You make an application online, and then how are you selected? Is there a selection commission that sits? What is the time period within which they actually assess your curriculum vitae, your performance requirements, and then appoint you?
There is a process to it depending on who is organizing, which government body is organizing these Melas, and how the process is to be evolved. If there are private sector involved, then typically it starts with shortlisting candidates and then having them out there to do a last round of interviews and things like that. Of course, the government processes are much more rigorous depending on the positions they are being hired, whether it's an entry-level position or it's a middle-level position. I mean, if someone is hiring for an entry-level position, the paramilitary, the focus will not be on just the resume, the focus will be on your physical conduct also, in terms of your physical strength, your physical stamina. So there would be all these parameters set in. But the final idea is it has to all dovetail into a single day of a Rozgar Mela to have all these people on board. And I think that's where the traction happens.
So you find this whole effort of employment generation, the Rozgar Mela, integrated with the launch of the Karmayogi Prarambh module as essential for the new India as we speak, both at the center and the states where the government is.
Absolutely. And that's what the whole deliverable objective with such a program is. The Karmayogi model alone cannot be a success model. The Rozgar Mela alone cannot be a success model. They all have to be moved in tandem. I think there was a mention of digital India, there was a mention of going local for vocal and things like that, going vocal for local. So all those things put together, I think it has to synergize somewhere and culminate into a specific objective. And that's where the important challenge is to stitch and synergize these separate objectives together into India's single goal of becoming not only the skill capital but one of the most employable capitals in the world.
So what does the future hold for the Rozgar Mela?
Well, it all depends on how we evolve this together, because as I said, it's not a very easy job synergizing the interests of state governments and central governments and private sector together into one single platform. I think the main challenge would be focusing on how fast we're able to synergize and make this into a much more ground trajectory event.
And regarding the module, you find improvements therein as well with time. You have a team of technicians who are trying to update and make it easier for those accessing the information.
See, technology upgradation and technology accessibility and adaptability, these are the three areas which anywhere, whenever you imbibing technology in any particular process, has to be a constant work in motion. And it has to be improved not only by what's required, but also what's required on the ground. So the success hugely will depend on how the technology team interacts and delivers. Someone sitting, for example, maybe in the remote regions of Arunachal Pradesh should have an equal access to the content with ease compared to someone sitting in the heart of Bombay and Colaba, for example. So that's where the delivery model and the robustness of the technology platform has to remain for its proper delivery and understanding to happen.
Well, thank you so much, Jayanto Das, for being with us on this program and letting us know your opinions about the government's efforts for employment generation via the Rozgar Mela and launch of the Karmayogi Prarambh module. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
You were listening to a discussion on government efforts for employment generation, Rozgar Mela and launch of Karmayogi Prarambh module. The participants were Jayant Das, economic analyst, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.